Good morning once again. We are now moving on with the new method, that is method 3, solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula, which sometimes all of you call bulldozer. So we are going to look at solving quadratic equations, using quadratic formula. So, from computing square method, we have learned how to deal with computing squares, and from computing squares, we derived the expression of x alone in terms of those constants. Can even still record it from ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Through making x the subject of the formula, we came out with x equals negative b plus or minus root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, where a, b, and c are constants. Can go to where a, b, and c are constants. So we are going to start with example, and I normally emphasize to you learners, you have a challenge of writing this formula. You want to, others want to stop division from me. The division covers every figure from up. Example 1. Solve the following equations. Part A, b squared minus 7p plus 12 equals 0. Part B, y squared plus 5y plus 6 equals 0. Part C, 2x squared minus 5x plus 3 equals 0. Part D, x squared minus 8x plus 7 equals 0. Part E, x squared minus 11x plus 30 equals 0. And then we can stop on part F, which goes x squared minus 9x plus 20 equals 0. So we are going to do these numbers using what we call the quadratic formula. So solution. We are starting with part A, which goes p squared. Part A goes p squared minus 7p plus 12 equals 0. So comparing with ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, we start by comparing that. That means our a equals 1, our b equals negative 7, and our c equals 12. So our equation is in terms of p. So we shall say p equals negative b plus or minus root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Then we are free to substitute in correctly what you have already stated. So this implies our b is already negative 7, becomes minus 7 plus or minus root of, what is our b? Negative 7, the whole of it squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times a c, which is 12, all over 2 times 1. Go on, a negative, they are going to coalesce and they disappear, they become a positive, that is 7 plus or minus root of negative 7 squared, you get 49 minus 48 all over 2. We got, this is 7 plus or minus root of 49 minus 48, you get 1 out of 2. The square root of 1 is 1. So we go on, P equals 7 plus or minus 1 out of 2. When we say plus or minus 1, it means you start by adding or subtracting. So I'll say either P equals 7 plus 1 out of 2, or P equals 7 minus 1 out of 2. So P equals 7 plus 1, you get 8 out of 2, or P equals 7 minus 1, you get 6 out of 2. So P equals 4, or P equals 3. You have already solved this one. And if a question comes and say, solve the equation using quadratic formula, I will expect you to use this one. But if a question comes and say, solve the equation, they have not restricted you. You can either use the factor method, you can either use quadratic formula, you can either use computing square. It depends on whichever is good for you. But I encourage you always practice all of them, such that even if a person comes and say, use this one, you're not moved. Use this one, you're already not moved with that. So we can go to part B. This is already part A, we have already got the solution. So we are moving to part B. And I normally tell you that when you have already seen this question on the video, you can first even click on it, you say pause. When it is pausing, then you can go ahead and calculate the more as you can be moving together. Always have your notebook and you continue clicking as you are learning. So part B goes that we solve the question y squared plus 5y plus 6 equals 0. So what we're going to do with this, we are going to start comparing it with ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Then what do we do after comparing? The coefficient of y squared stands for a. So what is a here? A is 1, b equals 5, and c equals 6. And I want to tell you that you understand these things, because mathematics is applied everywhere. You're going to use it in physics, you're going to solve these equations in chemistry, you're going to solve these equations even in biology, so in agriculture. So you need to be very serious. Even if it is in Maths 2, for us here we are laying the foundation of all those things. So take them to be serious with it. So we write our equations in terms of y equals negative b plus or minus root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we substitute in. What is our b? Is already 5. So it becomes negative 5 plus or minus root of 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6 all over 2 times 1. We go on negative 5 plus or minus root of 5 squared, you get 25, minus 4 times 1 times 6, you are getting 24 all over 2. We got this is negative 5 plus or minus root of 1 out of 2. The square root of 1 remains 1. This is negative 5 plus or minus 1 out of 2. So when you reach there, you say either y equals negative 5 plus 1 out of 2, or y equals negative 5 minus 1 out of 2. Go on. Negative 5 plus 1, you get negative 4. Divide by 2, you get negative 2, or y equals negative 3. So that's how we handle such a kind of the numbers in that way. So let's go to part C. That part is done. By the time when we are done with all the parts, then you have a clear message to do in your books. So you can just go and register for your exams when you continue studying, when you are at home, by the time when you return to school, or when you are there, you can just prepare. Do more of the questions, prepare, get ready to sit for the paper. So we are going to part C. Part C goes 2x squared minus 5x plus 3 equals 0. Still comparing with ax squared plus bx plus c, we come out with a equals 2, b equals -5, and c equals 3. So we are going to write our quadratic equation in terms of x. It will be x equals -b plus or minus root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Then we are free to substitute in correctly. So this becomes, what is our b? Comes -5 plus or minus root of -5 squared minus 4 times 2, which is our a, times the 3, but under the root, all over 2 times 2. We go ahead, a negative and a negative, they collide and it becomes a positive. We get 5 plus or minus root of 25 minus 4 times 2, you get a 6, and 4 times 2 you get 8, 8 times 3 you get still 24 all over 4, which becomes 5 plus or minus the root of 1 out of 4. So square root of 1 remains as 1. So this becomes 5 plus or minus 1 out of 4. We shall say either x equals 5 plus 1 out of 4, or x equals 5 minus 1 out of 4. So x equals 5 plus 1, you get 6 out of 4, or x equals 4 out of 4. So x equals, you can reduce, this is 3 out of 2, or x equals 1. Then there you will have already solved your equation using the quadratic formula. So we are moving to part D. 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 Part D goes x squared minus 8x plus 7 equals 0. So comparing with ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, a is 1, our b is -8, and our c equals 7. So using x equals -b plus or minus root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So what does it become? It becomes minus 8 plus or minus root of -8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 7 all over 2 times 1. So this one collides and becomes a positive. So we are having 8 plus or minus root of, what is -8 squared? You're getting 64 minus 4 times 8 times 4 times 1, that is a 4. Again a 4 times a 7, we are coming out with what we call 28 all over 2. So we move on. This becomes 8 plus or minus root of 64 minus 28. We will have our side work. 64 minus 28. This is 14. 14 minus 8, you will get a 6. 14 minus 8, you will get 14 minus 8. Can we get 14 minus 8? You will get a 6. Then here we have remained with, we get 36. 64 minus 28, you are getting 36 out of 2. So can we add on? Add on, this becomes 8 plus or minus. So the square root of 36 is 6 out of 2. Then we shall say either x equals 8 plus 6 out of 2, or x equals 8 minus 6 out of 2. This becomes 8 plus 6, you are coming out with a 14 out of 2, or x equals 8 minus a 6, you are coming out with a 2 out of 2, so x equals 7, or x equals a 1. That's how we handle such a kind of equations. So should always be very slowly when you are calculating such a kind of the numbers. So we are now moving on to part E. We are now moving on to part E. We are now moving on to part E, and we use the same applications. So part E goes x squared minus 11x plus 30 equals 0. It means comparing with ax squared plus bx plus equals 0, we shall have our a as 1, b as negative 11, and c as 30. So substituting in the formula x equals negative b plus or minus root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So this one becomes, our b is already negative. So when you substitute, it will become positive 11 plus or minus negative 11 squared minus 4 times 1.